Everybody is born with a little something extra, and sometimes they just have to find it. A little something extra is that superpower that every single one of us has inside that motivates us and drives our passion and makes us do the things that we do.
We're all on the same team. Let's think about how we can make that team as inclusive as we can.
For those of you listening to our podcast right now, you can also check out our video podcast at alittlesomethingextrapodcast.org.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of A Little Something Extra. I am Nancy Gianni and I'm here with my daughter.
The Gigi of Just the House.
Whoa, where's your microphone?
Gigi without a microphone.
The Gigi without a microphone. Sorry, there you go. Got it? What's your name again?
The Gigi of Just the House.
Woo, there she is. And who are you, sir?
And I am the Franco, Gigi's mic checker.
Today, I'm really, really excited about what we have going on today. I think one of the biggest things, and I remember one of the first things I learned as a parent of a child with Down syndrome, is if you can get any therapy, if they said you can only have one, speech therapy, OT, PT, DT, if you could only have one, take the speech therapy. Give that child a voice. And I do think it is the most important thing you can ever do for your child. And again, communication begins at birth. You know, I love that our LMNOP program starts as infants. You know, they start, prenatal diagnosis because they start coming in and already learning sign language, the parents and the siblings and all that. It's so important. Speech is such a big piece. So I'm really excited to get started with these girls. So I'm going, Gigi, after all the speech therapy she has had in her 22 years, wanted to do the bio. So we are going to have her read the bio about our two amazing guests. And so take it away, Gigi.
Today we are thrilled to welcome Jennifer Gray and Sarah Bookout. Jennifer and Sarah are experienced speech language pathologists. Jennifer is the founder of Gray Speech Services, and Sarah works at Bilingual Speech,
a bilingual speech language pathologist.
Working with Just House, Sarah is offering speech therapy in Arizona and Texas. Great Speech Therapy offers a range of services, including in-home
therapy,
teletherapy, and
consultations.
Teletherapy means the needs of individuals across the lifespan. The clinic employees evidence-based practices to enhance communication or motor skills, feeding abilities, aiming to improve quality of life, promote dependence. Joining us is welcoming Jennifer and Sarah.
Woo! There they are. So excited to have you guys and explain why that is so difficult for Gigi. So I love that we have you guys here because there's so much to learn around oral motor and speech in individuals with Down syndrome. But first, let's just get introduced to you guys and let's hear about you.
All right. I'm Jennifer Gray, and I started Gray's Peak Speech Therapy, which we're kind of rebranding, and I forgot to put it in our notes to you guys because it happened after I asked to do the podcast.
Oh, cool.
But we're kind of switching over to a different name of Connected Speech, but we are still Gray's Peak. And the reason for that, and Sarah can talk a bit about it too, is that we are going to be in Texas in addition to Colorado, so that's kind of new. And Sarah's in Houston. She used to be here. And through working with her, we have started working with a lot more teens and adults.
Oh, great.
And so Connected Speech is a little bit easier to put on us than Gray's Peak because it's kind of, no one really knows how to say it.
Yeah.
So it's still the same thing, but I'm a speech language pathologist and I actually specialize in speech clarity for people with Down syndrome. So it's pretty much all I do.
Phenomenal.
Initially, I did a lot of early intervention that, I was doing with working with people with Down syndrome, but I'm lucky enough now to just focus solely on Down syndrome for speech for all ages.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And it's very rare.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we do too is just trying to raise awareness that speech therapy is important, and not just when you're little, but throughout the lifespan, because it's a
Absolutely.
motor practice. It's just like the gym. And so
Yep.
we've been doing a lot more work with older adults too, just to get ready for employment or
Totally.
relationships
Yep.
or college.
Yeah.
All of those things that, we want to help prepare for, that a lot of people don't get.
Right.
Or don't realize until they get there that maybe they should have had more speech therapy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Sarah, you want to introduce yourself quick?
Sure. I am Sarah Bookout. I am a speech language pathologist now in Houston. I was in Denver previously. I've been working with Jennifer Gray my whole career this far.
Wow.
And I recently got my doctorate in speech language pathology and have helped Jennifer expand into Houston. We're going to be working at the Pursuit Center, which is a center or a campus really for adults with intellectual disabilities. And that's where I really hope to grow our speech therapy side, working with adults in that functional communication that's so important for independence in the sense of getting jobs, maybe living on their own, communicating in the community on their own. So I'm really excited about this kind of new phase that we're starting in about a month or less, 3 weeks. So
That's awesome.
I'm really excited to see where this goes.
That's awesome. I'm just still blown away that Jennifer, that you're doing that. I didn't know you worked exclusively with people with Down syndrome. I think that's fantastic. What is the main age that I know that Sarah's doing more adults? Are you all ages? Are you more adult focused, or where are you at?
All ages.
All ages.
I've been, from birth into, well into adulthood. Everybody kind of worked. We did most of my early work was with children, very young children for feeding. And that's kind of where I was introduced to Down syndrome. And then from there, it kind of spawned into, oh my gosh, parents want their children to talk.
Yes.
And that's not being really addressed in therapies much anymore. It's more language or device use or other forms of communication, which are great. But through that, work with really little ones, I also started realizing that when I worked with people that were older, there's a lot of things that we could have prevented or they'd be in a different place if maybe they had had either a different type of speech therapy or more speech therapy than they originally got. And so that kind of prevention and early intervention that I did really propelled me to start thinking about people with Down syndrome at 18. Right. Or 22. Those kind of pivotal times where that's what we're really doing with our little ones is we're getting them ready to do those adult things just like we do with everybody else. But I don't know that people really think of it that way. And so
I agree. I agree 100%. And everything we do at Gigi's is purposeful and progressive, getting them ready for that next phase in life. So it's such an important piece. And for me, like I said, speech was one of the most important things. Dr. Chacoin was the one who said that to me. If you can do any of the therapies, do speech, give your child a voice. And of course, when Gigi went to preschool and, wasn't speaking that much and would come home with scratches on her face or on her arm and not be able to tell me how they got there. It was devastating as a parent to not be able to help them, and then calling the school and they'd be like, we know she came in like that at recess. We're not sure. So she couldn't tell me when somebody was hurting her. And that was so hard for me. And I think that's why really we've made sure that everything that we do here at Gigi's in our programming, everything we do is therapeutic and or educational, but that therapeutic piece is key. So when I think about our Gigi Fit program, people don't think about speech therapy when you think about Gigi Fit, but we do Gigi Fit for every age group, starting at Gigi Fit infants, because they have to grow that core in order to be able to get the air out to speak. They don't realize that it's a full body function for people to be able to speak. Our literacy program, another thing, working on the articulation and all those other things are, all of our programs are geared towards really honing those skills that we have to hone, they have to do for the rest of their lives. So things that come naturally to most of us, these guys have to teach their bodies to do and then continue to hone those skills. So I guess one question I have is, I remember when we first opened the Playhouse and there was a girl who was pretty much nonverbal, and I had talked to her mother, and the mother said, I said, is she getting, how much speech is she getting in school? Is she getting enough speech? They said, oh, you know what? She gets like a 15-minute that's kind of built into things because she's speaking good enough for somebody with Down syndrome. What? Good enough for somebody with Down syndrome. And That to me was unacceptable, will forever be unacceptable, and we need to be able to give these kids a voice. So I would love to talk to you more about what are your biggest misconceptions, that people don't know, that parents don't know. And I remember always, again, and I'll get this out of the way now so that you guys could talk. But when Gigi was little and being told that, and I tell every new family that comes into Gigi's, the harder we are on them, the stronger they're going to be. Because families were saying, put an extra hole in the nipple and then they'll get more out of it. And I'm like, the harder they have to suck, the stronger their muscles are going to get. But you want to make things easy for your kids. So you understand why people are doing it. But also people were not, they were not starting them on food because they heard they could choke or they could do this. And then that starts with the sensory issues. So there was so many things with speech that I continue to see, especially for families where either it's a first child or an only child. And they don't have the other kid, like for Gigi, I remember I walked in, I thought she had blood all over her face and she was 4 months old. And I just saw this dried, look like just crust on her face. It was Oreos. Franco was feeding her Oreos at 4 months old. So she had those siblings that challenged her and gave her things. Whereas had she been my first one, I would have never given her anything. I've said a million times, Franco was my first, and I peeled his grapes and his hot dogs until he was 4. Legit, because I was so afraid of
And then I had to see an SLP because of you.
He did have to see an SLP.
Miss Carcella. To this day, I think that name was fake. I think that she purposely created that name just so I can get over my rotorism. Yeah.
So anyways, those are like a lot of the things that I have heard and why I'm such I just so believe in speech therapy at every single age and that it must continue, which is, we're able to do it through our literacy program and also through the Meet and Greet speech and language program. But I would love to hear more from you guys now on those misconceptions and what's the most important thing for a parent to know.
And that's exactly why I started specializing, because I was running into everything you just said is exactly what I was encountering and exactly what keeps me going right now is that it's possible. Speech clarity is not that, it's not something that's off the table.
Yes.
It's definitely possible. But if you think about how much someone talks that doesn't have Down syndrome at the same age, or even from the age of 2 years old, there's already this giant gap between someone without Down syndrome and someone with Down syndrome right from the beginning, just in terms of how much they actually try to speak or practice talking. Mm-hmm. And so right from the beginning, that big, huge gap of not saying very much, we really need to kind of start doing that again in terms of putting speech back in when they're very little so that they have that practice. Most people and most professionals and medical professionals I encounter, I don't think actually believe that speech clarity is something that we should work on.
Which is insane, especially at this day and age. Gigi,
you say it's too hard?
That's
what they think.
What they feel, yeah.
Yeah, and imagine trying to live and with technology now, not being able to talk to Siri, not Siri being able to properly understand you, or Alexa. Remember when we first got Alexa, when Gigi was like in her early teens, and her trying to talk to Alexa, and she would get so mad because Alexa wasn't getting it. And you know what, Alexa?
But just overall, though, I mean, there's so much communication that's happening.
That's verbal.
It's not necessarily. Yeah, it's all. Yeah, exactly.
Right, and that's the thing is that we know that 97% of people with Down syndrome use speech to communicate.
Yes.
So why aren't we working on speech? Why am I the only one that's really kind of pointing this out as a full-time?
Right.
Do you think to that?
Passion.
Do you think to a lot of these medical professionals too? Do you think it's kind of like an outdated perspective that they have because they've seen so many patients that are nonverbal or close to nonverbal that they're like at this point don't even bother.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're trying to change. Well, what if you did it this way instead? Here's what we know works. Here's how people learn to actually speak. And it's not sounds. We all go back to individual sounds. You and I didn't learn to speak by learning sounds first.
Right.
No, we learn it in context. We learn it in running speech. We learn it through later helping us with language and reading. I mean, her ability to read what she just read today, all of those words are possible. What if she didn't know how to read?
Right.
what if no one knew? That's actually one of their strengths. What if no one knew that people with Down syndrome can learn to read really early?
Yes.
And if we use that so they're more successful in the future with school, but also it builds all those language skills. And now we have a way to practice speech connected. So in connected speech,
Right.
saying many words at a time suddenly is available to someone who can read.
Yes.
Instead of that single word stuff that we are kind of trained to do.
Right.
And that's been something that I've seen so much of working with teens and adults is all of the one word responses. I'll ask them an open-ended question and I'll get one word back. And I know they can do more. They just tried to tell me a whole story about their day earlier, just, sharing thoughts. But when asked a question, they give one word. Or if they want something, they give one word. And they can do so much more. But it's been, like you said earlier, that's good enough because they have Down syndrome. And that drives me insane. So we work on I sentences and we sentences and use reading as a model for that language structure.
Absolutely.
And high repetition. And it's something that I get reports back from families all the time. Like, they said a whole sentence.
Yeah.
I know they can do it. That should be the expectation. Yes. So I think that is something that I think even in the schools needs to be reminded to sometimes teachers or just other professionals that might not have the education on what people with Down syndrome can do speech and language wise. Like, we need to educate everybody to hold that expectation so it's similar across the board.
Absolutely.
That is such an interesting thing that you pointed out too, because it's so common. I mean,
Yeah.
it happens all the time. I mean, we've struggled with Jeej too, even when we're doing like media interviews and stuff. We have to make sure that we're prompting the interviewer to not ask a yes or no question, because Jeej will immediately only just say yes or no and won't articulate as to, the reason behind that
But
response.
I love this or that. Like I have to say, give us a sentence. Give us a sentence about it. Because like you said, if she's just talking to you, she's going to talk your ear off.
Yeah.
But if you're asking her a question, she's only going to answer your question with as minimal words as she can. And we're like, you just talk the whole way home. And then you get in front of and again, I know nerves comes into when you're doing media, that's hard. And you don't have everything in front of you. That is hard. But it's so true. And making her answer. And again, it's up to us to have that expectation from her to answer more than just that. That one question.
And we have to gently tell parents that sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, here's what they can do. And through reading, and when we show them, that's one of my favorite things, is you can just see some parents cry, or the emotion, like, oh my God, I didn't know that she could do that. Right. And the little tiny moments, and at all ages.
Yeah.
We see it in adults, but once we give them a way that makes sense to them to use, then we can access that. And the practice piece, we have to practice it. I mean, daily, all the time. It's just like anything else. We don't think of it that way.
Is that the key to being able to, like, say, for being able to answer with a more robust response? Is it just through repetition and just practice and enforcing, like, this is how you should be answering these? Or, like, what's the best practice for anyone listening to be able to help in that?
Practicing in sentences, right? Or practicing in a way, in a rhythm that is similar to how we are talking to each other right now. It's the repetition, but it's the repetition of knowing that I can do it. And so there's that confidence piece. Once you practice speech a lot, even if you're reading it, even if you're not you memorize it or it's rote, what one of the programs we'll talk about is LSVT. What we learn there is that just by practicing speech a lot, suddenly people start talking in sentences and phrases they've not practiced.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden they know they can. Awesome. So all that kind of falls back. And now all of a sudden we're getting answers that are 4 words long.
Wow. There was one thing that I had heard a while back is that, and this is why, for speech pathology for individuals with Down syndrome is becoming more of a, something that you have to choose, because they stopped doing the oral motor in school, and oral motor is such an important piece for our kids with the low tone. Can you speak on that a little bit and explain actually, I guess, what the oral motor is and why the schools have stopped teaching that when it's such an important piece and it has to almost be like a specialty now? Is that how that works?
it's become a specialty because of the difficulty that we had with it early on. And so actually this is exactly where I met Down syndrome. And so I was that was not my original career path. I was doing stuttering at the time, which actually I'm kind of coming full circle to. But I found I was working for somebody, and that's what I was doing, was oral motor feeding. And that's what really opened the world for me to really start looking at speech even as movement.
Yes.
We don't think of it. We think of speech as being a cognitive act.
Yes.
Well, with people with Down syndrome, they have anatomical and physiological differences that aren't going away.
Right.
And so we have to do that oral motor so that they can learn a better way of using the muscles and the oral musculature, not just for feeding and survival in the beginning, but to have that better speech clarity. And in the schools, they have, at least when I was in the schools for a while, if it's not educationally relevant,
right,
which of course it is down the line, but
yes,
that phrase right there is what kind of stopped therapists from
Wow.
using it in the schools. And then because there aren't enough of us,
Yeah.
you know, they get 15 minutes. What are you going to do in 15 minutes? What are you
Right.
going to do
A
in
week.
1 hour?
Yeah.
A week
Right.
Oh
in
my
a
gosh,
group.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. In a group. Yeah. Yes.
How?
Yeah.
And so the big piece there is, yeah, we need all these pieces, and maybe we need speech therapy more than once a week.
Yes.
Maybe you need more than one speech therapist.
Yes.
Because we have to work on 200 things that is impossible to do. So that frequency is exactly the thing we need in therapy as well. And so we know, and the research says this. It's what's so frustrating
Yes.
is that we know that 3 to 5 times a week and a little bit shorter sessions with intensity and frequency.
That'd be amazing.
The only thing that works. And it's the one thing we're not doing.
Yeah. I begged for the hours, begged for it. Like when she started emerging and really started going, I was begging. I'm like, I was doing a private one. I was giving whatever I could get from the state, the school, anybody. I'm like, just please give us more. She is showing you she wants to speak. She just needs a little help. Is there tools, you know, when I think about like how you know, everything at Gigi's, like you said, you get them, you know, in our literacy program, we get them for that 1 hour. And then we try to give the parents the tools they need. We give them the books, you know, the family book that they're working on, something that's meaningful and relevant to that child so they can continue and practice that at home. Is there exercises and at different ages too, exercises that our kids can do, that our families can do at all the different ages, that we can help them at home when they don't get that, you know, when they're not getting that one-on-one 24/7?
Yes. And that's kind of what we do, is we make sure, and that kind of even teletherapy really has helped us do that, because all of a sudden we can get in everybody's living room,
Yeah.
everybody's kitchen, right? How do you practice speech? Are there times of day that might be easier?
Yeah.
During snack time, during meal time, during bath time, in the car. You know, there's these times where we have their attention, where we can really work on speech. Through oral motor, there are tools and programs that you can follow. Talk Tools is where I came from.
Yeah.
And that, you know, there's more than that now. We have myofunctional therapy, oral myofunctional therapists that have kind of branched from that specialize there. And it's extremely important work. I left that work because I really wanted to focus on speech and less on that kind of movement at all times. But in terms of tools, the only tool really that you've already talked about is talking and reading and watching others. So anything visual, unless you have a visual impairment too, but anything visual we know works. And so if they can watch other people do things well, watch themselves do things well, improves their chances of doing it again. And the research says all this too. But really, it's just talking. We need to talk a lot. Think about how much you say in one day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's why we're so good at it. Why are actors so good at it?
It's what they do.
Because they practice their lines.
Yep. You know, the one thing another piece, and actually we actually got Gigi started in voice lessons because I had heard that it does help in speech and diction, and like her voice coach, I mean, is amazing. When Gigi sings, her diction is phenomenal. When I'm like, why can't you do that when you speak? Because when she's, you know, Miss Wilson just gives her and that just means end it with a T. And you know what I mean? Like, and when she sings, you're going to hear her end every word. And it's fantastic. I mean, the way she does it when she sings is amazing. I'm still trying to figure out, I'm like, geez, when you sing it that way, you should be able to speak it that way. But, to really do, she's not there yet. But I do think that the voice lessons and the singing was something that really helped her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you said that. The reason I started working on voice and when I started looking for a program like LSVT Loud was because I read an article that said that most people with Down syndrome will never learn to sing, or will never be able to sing. And I was like, oh no, this is the one thing they love more than life,
right?
Is music.
That's so true.
Well, again, thinking about, because Gigi sings the national anthem. She sang it at the Cubs game, the Sox game, at a country concert with Scotty McCreery, right?
Right.
So she sang that everywhere. But again, it's building up your core to belt out. I mean, that's a hard song to sing, and the words and all of that. Yeah.
Right. And so if we do that through that practice, that voice piece really is what actually makes speech difficult to understand. It's that voice, being able to kind of keep it going for any length of time instead of the spurt one word answer.
Yep.
And the way you're talking of holding that voice through forces you almost to kind of slow down, over articulate.
Yes. Yes.
Keep the voice moving. And right there, that solves almost every single problem we have when we're trying to talk in sentences like we are today. If you simply slow down or say it louder or sing it,
yes,
suddenly everything becomes clearer. And so, because there's so many things to work on that we can't possibly do in one session or one therapist, if we can simply talk louder or use like a melodic intonation is where I would go from voice, where we kind of talk a little more like this. It's still keeping the voice going, but we're not singing all day. I've had parents, I'm like, I don't talk like that all the time. And I hear us be like, oh, really? I thought you talk like that all the time. I'm just constantly modeling it because I don't work. It works for us.
Yeah.
You can't yell fast. You can't yell or talk louder and have bad articulation. It just kind of solves the whole big ball of things we have to work on. And so those are the techniques that Sarah and I use a lot. And Sarah's been able to do this with Gigi's in Arizona and starting a little bit in Houston.
That is awesome.
Yes.
Sarah, what are some of your, like you working with the adults, what are some of your strategies? I would love to hear some of those because, as much as we've done everything we can, obviously, we're still honing this skill. It's going to be something that she's going to work on. Lifelong. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of what I do, I always start, even with my clients who come to me, and it's not necessarily vocal loudness or speech intelligibility that's their main problem or their area that they really want to work on. But we always start with deep breaths and ahs just to get us going. Because I've found that, working on deep breath and being loud kind of helps their posture. It helps their confidence. Some of the kids that come to me or adults that come to me that are more shy or reserved, just being louder and doing those simple ahs, there's so much more buy-in because it's easy and they can get it done. They can get better each time. They're watching the numbers on the timer and it's a goal for themselves. And then after we warm up with that, they are like locked and ready to go with whatever it is I throw at them. That's awesome. Then a big strategy I have found that has helped is asking them what they want to work on and having them pick their schedule for speech. And once because they are adults or they're teenagers about to be adults, giving them some autonomy and giving them some choices and talking about things that are exciting or like realistic in their world makes it not seem like speech therapy.
Totally.
Instead, it feels more like, okay, this is the person that's here to help me and I'm excited to reach my goals that I picked for myself. And sometimes that's things like being able to go to a bar and order a drink for my 21 and older kids. And some of it is asking a girl on a date or to prom. Some of it is, one client I had his goal was to give a best man speech at his brother's wedding.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
And then sometimes it's, a job interview at Topgolf or wherever it is. So really picking all these things that they want to do instead of me saying, okay, here's a book that we're going to read today, or here are some phrases about your brother. If it's not meaningful, it doesn't really matter, especially the older they get. And I find using video modeling of clips from Love on the Spectrum or just real life situations, not cartoons, but things I can find on YouTube. And we
Yes.
can talk about it
Yeah.
and say, okay, who asked the most questions? How do you think the other person felt? What kind of questions would you ask?
Yeah.
And then, of course, I scaffold it based on the needs of the person I'm working with, but all of them can make choices, no matter who
Totally.
it is, how verbal they are, no matter what their goals are, they can all make choices on what they want to do and what they want to practice. And so many of them have never been asked, what do you want to do next?
Yeah.
Or what do you want to do this summer or this weekend? Or what do you want to work on? Instead, they're just told.
Right.
So I there's just so much language and communication that comes out of just asking them questions.
I love that. She loves talking about her future, don't you?
I love that.
You know, when I look at the, Jeej has goals for, she has physical fitness goals every single day, has to get 10,000 steps, has to get her workouts in. And then the only thing like that I had for, because she should be doing, I mean, this is even more important, would that be reading out loud? Like what would be a good, you know what I mean? When I look at what would then be her goal, I put on the fridge, I always have read a book. Would it be read that book out loud? Would that be better for her speech? Or would it be better to have her write something and then practice that because it's specifically about her? Or what would be a recommendation you guys would have that she could do, just to get her daily workout, her speech workout? What would a good speech workout look like? Because we work out every day. And I think adding a speech goal in our workout would really be awesome.
Yeah, I have a quick suggestion that just came to mind, and then I'll let Jen share.
Perfect.
But because I recently did this with one of my clients I met with this morning, calling and leaving a voicemail for someone in their life and to introduce themselves, to share a couple things going on, ask a question, and then end it. And then see when the other person listens to it, how well they understand it.
I
make
love
notes on that, and then call them back to talk about it.
Yes, so good. Well, because that's another thing. She's a phenomenal texter. She could text like the best of them. She's like, but she talks to her boyfriend a lot on the phone, but they're mostly together. So, and he's a big talker. So it kind of talks over you anyway. But oh my gosh, I love that idea. She calls her siblings like she should call somebody every day. Leave a message. I love that idea. And then because I love that. Oh my gosh, that's great, Sarah.
Yeah, and what we find is they've not had the chance to monitor themselves. They wait for us to tell them how to speak clearer. Speak clearer. Right? So they just keep going.
Yeah.
And so whether or not they were understood really it's not their responsibility because we forgot to make it their responsibility.
Yes. Well, and we understand them when they talk.
Right.
Because we're with them every day. So
we're not thinking about
at home, I don't correct it and say, oh, go slower and go, because I'm just trying to get, needs met and get things done, right?
You know what she's saying.
Yeah. I love that. The other thing I was sorry, Franco keeps trying to talk. Okay, then I'm done. Then I'll stop after this. I know. It's my most important thing in life is getting her.
It's
the
amazing,
voice.
and I totally agree.
But I want to know about karaoke. Sorry,
I was also going to ask.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
But I want to ask a different question though, because karaoke is a good one that I want to talk about. But I want to go back to misconception potentially. Within adults with Down syndrome specifically. So there's so many adults with Down syndrome that I can have conversations with and they're talking like there is clearly thoughts coming out and they're trying to articulate, but they're just, maybe they just didn't get the amount of speech therapy that they needed or the right, like the articulation's just not there. I guess two questions. The first one is how much can that change? Like as an adult, is there like a ceiling that you can or is it, can you break through it and it's really it's limitless opportunity to be able to grow your speech? So yeah, I guess we'll ask that part first. Is there a threshold after you reach a certain age?
No. And it's funny, we've started to see some phrases in research or in some writings online or whatever, but basically what it says is that adults with Down syndrome can still learn as they age. Even that phrase kind of makes me angry.
Yeah.
But I think that's what they mean, right? Like don't stop. Being an adult doesn't mean it's over. We can, you can pick up language easier when you're little, but no, there is no ceiling. And really the thing is, if you keep practicing speech, and that even that kind of mind numbing speech. So reading a list, reading everything you were saying before, reading something she writes, reading a book, reading a cereal box. If you keep practicing, it will get better, or at least it will stay good if you're at a place that where it really is functional. But if we think about life expectancy now for people with Down syndrome, it's in the 60s. I mean, when I heard and first learned about how much longer people are living, I kind of panicked. Because everybody was excited, and I was sitting here like, oh my gosh,
we have to.
They need a voice more
work
than
to do.
ever.
Us we need to build a world for them.
You know what? We feel
they need to go to college and get a job and live by themselves.
Yeah,
they're not going to have their parents forever. So I'd love to think that there is not a ceiling. Amazing. I mean, I think we all have one, maybe, but I'd love to pretend like we don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess the second part then too is that there's so many people that are nonverbal, and I think that there's a lot of times people have a thought that like language just doesn't exist for them. Like they're not comprehending these things, or that they don't know language or how to speak these things. In your experience, have you come across people that were nonverbal going in and then found their voice through speech therapy and they broke through that barrier?
Definitely. I mean, I know Sarah has a couple like specific examples with older kids, but I mean, there are some that are nonverbal that may never be really complex medical cases that, we need those alternative ways of speaking, whether it's sign language or a device or pictures. Those are things that were really important. But I have helped, like the crying thing, like I have helped people talk that no one else even bothered to see if that was something that they could do. Wow. So yes, I think that word nonverbal, even, I've had parents tell me, well, she's not verbal. And then we have our first session. And I'm like, we've been talking for 20 minutes. They're not nonverbal.
I don't like that.
That's why I wanted to bring it up, because I feel like there's a lot of parents or families that just might feel defeated. Like, it's just, it ain't going to happen.
Nonverbal.
And
it's like no. 6 years old.
It's like, no, absolutely. I mean, they're verbal. You just aren't.
She's nonverbal.
You aren't properly.
And most therapists, I think that.
I
mean, that's what we're really trying to change. And that's what keeps me going, is that's just not true. Look what we can do. And even Sarah's had some breakthroughs with adults. I think the example of the young man who spoke at his brother's wedding.
Wow.
He was a perfect example of that.
Yeah. He was just using one-word answers most of the time, or he has a dual diagnosis of Down syndrome and autism, and had a lot of maybe like sounds, like not speech sounds, but still vocal, but not using sentences. And then, after our LSVT program and regular speech therapy twice a week and a lot of work put in by his parents, he gave like a 4-sentence speech at his brother's wedding, and his goal at his day program went from following directions to asking peers a question. And we sign on and he says, "Hi Sarah, how was your weekend?" He's just made such dramatic improvements, and telling his sister happy birthday and "I love you mom" on Mother's Day. Like, he has really, they also didn't think he knew how to read. He's a gentleman who is 33, and he reads so well when given that support and introduced to that, and we're not just assuming he can't. So now he uses reading as a support for some of his longer sentences in practice there. And it's just been amazing to see the progress he's made.
Yes, that is awesome. I do think, I think there's a lot to that. There's just, because it's hard, you want to protect your heart. So you just say, oh, he's nonverbal, that's not going to happen. And I hear it happen at kids that are so young. And I'm like, oh gosh, please don't put that label on them forever.
Right now.
Yes.
Please do not do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, therapists don't know what to do. And so as much as I blame therapists, it really isn't their fault. There's not much out. When I started learning more about this speech piece with Down syndrome, there was nothing. I couldn't find information. I mean, I could, but it was bad.
Yeah.
So I learned from parents, and I listened to parents. And the one phrase that just really set me on my path, I'm like, this is it, I'm not doing anything else, is I want everybody to know how smart she is.
Yes.
I want everybody to know how funny she is. I want to be able to understand her when she talks. That was the number one parent choice
Yes.
of young children, and it still is. They've pulled there's some polls out there. But then the therapists aren't working on it because they're not really sure how. So they go to the sound thing, and the sound thing doesn't work because that's not how we learn.
Right.
And then they give up because they're not sure what to do next. And that's our other piece is, I'm doing a lot less therapy now. Sarah's kind of taking over, and we're moving into this new place, but also training other therapists. So I do a lot of courses and CE events. I speak at the conferences and NDSC every year, and we'll be there this year.
Okay.
We have a 3-hour one where we can everything that we've talked about today is going to go into that.
That's awesome.
And this is what you can expect, from a parent perspective. And here's what you can do as a therapist. It's not over.
Yeah.
Here's why they're not continuing to grow, or why you think maybe they can't use speech. And here's how to do it instead.
That's awesome. I know G just dying to ask some questions. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry.
She's been,
she keeps looking at us like
she's been doing things to try to get
I've been
my
cutting
attention.
off Franco, and
She was sitting. I don't know if you guys noticed. She has like her
Right.
Velcro watch on, and she's putting it right up to
By
the
the
mic
microphone?
and just slowly unvelcroing it. Or like she has her straw in her drink, and she's just slow like.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I get it.
All right, go ahead, G.
All right, baby, what you got?
Exactly.
What's your favorite part in your job?
This, I think, is kind of, I could talk about this all day long. And sometimes, people are like, okay, that's enough. And I kind of be bulldoze in these situations because I love it. I absolutely love teaching people what's possible. It opens the world for parents and therapists and people with Down syndrome, and just trying to change that. Here's proof. Here's how you do it. Here's what's possible. And I know that's something that you guys do on a daily basis, but from a speech perspective, there's really nothing more important than being able to communicate.
Agreed.
Because if that's relationships, that's jobs, that's anything that makes you feel good about yourself, that confidence
Totally.
is all really, if we water it down, is speech, and we're just not giving it the importance.
Nope.
I really love building relationships with my clients. I love when I start with somebody who is a little unsure about me, unsure about speech, and after a while we go from, I don't know this person, I don't want to work with you, to when can I see you again? When can we meet? They're sharing about their personal lives, and we open up a way to have speech therapy that's not just the black and white, what you think of in school with the worksheets and all that stuff, to make it something really meaningful to them. I just love seeing that transition and the relationships I get to make with all my clients.
I love that. I love that empowerment and confidence you give them. They kind of come in going, I'm here because my mom told me I have to be here. You know what I mean? They're not, that's why they go. And then just even in that one session, being heard, being respected, feeling confident, being rewarded, all of that. Who doesn't want to come back for more of that?
Right.
Love that. Okay, go ahead, Gigi.
I love singing karaoke. Will you help my speech?
I think so. Yeah. Because you're talking, you're being loud, you're using music to make it fun and connecting your speech all together. It requires a big breath.
Yep.
I think singing and karaoke, and the fun part about karaoke too is you're getting to read some of the words if you don't know all the words.
Yes.
Just by memory. So you're using all the strategies we use in speech, just making it a little more fun.
Oh, I love that. What's your favorite karaoke song?
I don't know.
You got a few.
Absolutely no.
What's your number one?
I like Frozen.
Hold that.
I like Frozen.
Okay. What's your number one family karaoke song?
Sweet Caroline.
Sweet Caroline? Use your mic.
Sweet Caroline.
Sweet Caroline. Yep.
One.
That's a good one.
Sweet Caroline.
Yeah.
That is a good one.
Yep.
Because it draws out all that sound.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot. We love that one.
There's a rap song that you're pretty good at too, isn't there?
Yeah, Fergalicious.
Fergalicious. She's really good at Fergalicious.
Mm-hmm.
I love that song.
Yeah. And
Well, it's my Bella's song, but
that one's Bella's song?
Yes.
Okay. And then what about Sir Mix-a-Lot?
and Baby Got Back too.
Baby Got Back. That's another one.
That's a good one.
That's a family classic. We all know every word to that song. I'm very Probably shouldn't be proud to say.
I would have to say that Sir Mix-a-Lot has done wonders for Gigi's speech.
Yes.
Giving me to-
Perfect.
From the time she was very young.
Yep.
And the song, Break Your Heart, too.
And which one?
The other song.
Which other one?
The song. Achy Breaking Your Heart.
Achy Breaky
No.
Heart. Oh, Don't Go Breaking My Heart
Yes.
by Elton John.
Yes.
Yes.
Another
Achy
big one,
Breaky,
too.
Don't Go Breaking My Heart.
Yes, that's another big one.
Maybe a little achy breaky heart too. All right, what else you got?
Why do you like helping people like me and my friends?
That's such a good question, Gigi. I like helping people like you and your friends because I find that you all are so excited to learn, that you're passionate about wanting to communicate with others. And I know that you guys can do it too.
And the same exact reason. I love it because I get to see progress really fast, even sometimes. And knowing that maybe I helped a better path
Yeah,
for
I love
this
it.
person going forward. And then, keeping that path, not just being like, okay, you're talking, bye.
It's over. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're done.
Yep.
If you had one message to the world, what would it be?
I would say be loud and be confident.
Oh, I like it.
I would say that people with Down syndrome can do hard things.
Oh, good one.
That's a good one.
That
Good
is a
one.
good one, right? You
That is a
show
good
it all
one.
the time, don't you?
Yep, all the time. So our podcast is called A Little Something Extra. What do you guys think is your little something extra? What drives you to do everything that you do?
I would say my little something extra is I don't like to quit and I have high expectations for myself. So I think that carries over to having high expectations for everybody that I work with. And I want to help them to keep going and not quit too.
Yeah.
So I would say that little extra drive in me helps me
Love
help
it.
others find that feeling too.
That's awesome.
great. Yeah, always trying to make people better. That's great.
And I think mine would be curiosity. We don't know enough.
Yes.
We need to be innovative, and we need to be willing to take those chances
Yeah.
to go against the grain so that we can make these improvements. Nothing is set in stone, but I think a lot of people, like we've been talking about, think that. So
Right.
I'm very curious. I'm constantly looking and searching, even in strange places, for ways that we can help people with Down syndrome be better understood.
I love that. Gigi, are you ready to give us some tips today?
Yeah, hold on.
Whoop. Oh boy, get it ready. You
Mhm.
ready for some tips?
To say tips.
I did say tips.
Tips!
There it is.
Being a good listener.
Tips on being a good listener. Okay, let's do
Oh,
it.
that's a perfect one. We kind of forget that. We always want to think about what we're going to say next.
Right?
But really kind of maybe just focusing on their face and really kind of trying to understand what they're saying, but how they feel when they're saying it.
Yes.
So
Good one.
important.
See? What do you got?
Give your full attention to the person who is speaking.
I like that.
Be patient. Let them finish talking before you talk.
Good.
Mhm.
Keep your eye contact to show are you listening.
Keep eye contact. Yep.
Be encouraging of other feelings.
Oh,
Be
okay.
encouraging of other feelings. Very good.
Offer support to be there for them.
Woo! All right. What else you got? Do you think anything else there? Anything else on being a good listener?
I love that last part you said there, Gigi. I think sometimes we don't really think about the other person, and people with
Right.
Down syndrome aren't taught to always think that, right? They're so
Yeah.
worried about how you're going to say
Everybody,
it.
right?
Yeah, right. And we all do.
Yeah.
But yes, really kind of listening and seeing if you can hear what they're saying, so maybe you can help them or support them or learn from them.
Totally. Awesome.
Yes, it would be. That's the best advice that I could definitely give you. That's
Yep.
for sure. Make sure you're listening, paying attention to what others are saying, so then you could be able to interact and
Yeah. Well,
provide back to what they're saying.
I know I'm going to start implementing now some new speech exercises since we do all of the everything else in fitness we do. We just haven't been doing consistently speech exercises, whether it's karaoke, reading a book, or reading, she does a lot of writing. You could read your writing.
Sometimes.
Yeah. You write about your future with Lucas.
Yes.
Yeah. She writes a lot of love letters to her boyfriend. So you could even read those out loud. It doesn't matter what it is, just to be, doing it out loud, constantly articulating that stuff, singing, working on your diction. So this has been
Yeah.
awesome.
Actually, I have one more quick question I didn't get to get in
Hurry
earlier,
up.
but I'm curious. So one of the programs that I love in the Down syndrome community is improv.
Oh, yes.
How big of an advocate are you in improv for developing speech skill?
When I found the Improveneers kind of accidentally, I was so excited because I'd been thinking that the whole time.
Yeah.
Right?
You know, if we could just have a way to have these exercises or games that were, you know, interactive with each other. And I did a podcast with them once together.
Mhm.
And you can still listen to it. It's out there somewhere. But I was like, oh my gosh, I wish this was everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, is there one here? Is there, you know, but I think they're still in Ohio and maybe just the
We're going to be
We're,
piloting.
internet
we're piloting
stuff,
their programming within
So
Gigi's
we'll be,
Playhouse now,
yeah.
too.
So we've got 66 locations and startups. So we'll be able to really
Oh,
get the
perfect.
word out there, and we're serving families in 93 countries. So you just
So, yeah,
never
I'm
know.
hoping
We'll
that we could be able to start
get
implementing
No,
more
that.
and
that's
more Improveneers.
It is. I wish we had it here. I wish I could implement it here.
Totally.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Well, I'm hoping that we'll have it hopefully at the Denver Playhouse and being able to get it at other playhouses too. So if we can start mixing with you guys on that as well, I'd love to.
And that's what loud is. You have to project your voice.
Yep. Get
Right?
it out there. You got
Exactly.
something else, Gigi?
I don't know my superpower.
Hold your.
I know my superpower is
What's your superpower?
love and caring.
Loving and caring. That is your superpower. I like
very
it.
good
You
one.
win.
I forgot inspiration to people.
Oh, and an inspiration to people. That is a good
I
superpower.
think you are.
Yep.
Good stuff. Geez,
I love it.
those.
Well, thank you so much for being on. I know this ran a little long, but this is such an important
I'm-
topic. I would love to, maybe get you on our virtual playhouse to do a workshop for the different
Would
age
love
groups. So yeah, we will definitely be being in touch, and
Or come to a conference.
or come
too.
to our conference. We do a big conference with all of our locations that are there. That's a great idea, Gigi.
Thank you.
It's a
I
very
would
good
love
idea.
that. I would love that.
Yeah. All right. Well, then we will be in touch, sister. Thank you so much for what you're doing for the Down syndrome community. And thank you for being on A Little Something Extra.
Thank you.
Everybody is born with a little something extra, and sometimes they just have to find it. A little something extra is that superpower that every single one of us has inside that motivates us and drives our passion and makes us do the things that we do.
We're all on the same team. Let's think about how we can make that team as inclusive as we can.
For those of you listening to our podcast right now, you can also check out our video podcast at alittlesomethingextrapodcast.org.